going to take John's pizzazz away. I'm going to let John talk about himself and what he does. He is a CIS instructor, and we're very, very fortunate to have him. And he's going to talk about mobile phishing today. John.
How's everybody doing? She talked about human resources logging into Facebook and getting out online. They don't have to do that anymore. How many of you know what augmented reality is? Some of you in my class, possibly. They could hold up their cell phone, their smart cell phone, have an application running that can look at your face, recognize your face, and look up all the details about you that you have in cyberspace. So who needs to look up stuff anymore? You have to be careful with that augmented reality. It has some privacy issues that you may want to be careful of. Hopefully everybody knows what their cyberspace footprint looks like. You actually detail it quite frequently, I hope. 3 seconds. 2, 3. Hello?
Is it working?
I see a green light. Oh, there we go. 2 years ago, my presentation was about sending out an email. And that email had a PowerPoint presentation in it that would update this thing called the host file. And then your host file would redirect you to a website. This one's a little bit more interactive. So if you want to participate, you can. For those of you with the smartphones, and you can look up free Wi-Fi. There is a new Wi-Fi out there. It's called free MSAC Wi-Fi. We'll be using that today. Again, a little disclaimer on this one. I'm using technology that's about 10 years old. Anybody can do this. While I was playing around with this, I had quite a few people attaching to it down in the basement. I thought nobody would see me down in the basement, but people were still, oh, free Wi-Fi, boom. They connected, and I'm like, oh, geez. Don't do that. It's just a matter of time when somebody with a smartphone that can be a wireless access point can do everything that I'm going to do today on an Android or some other type of smartphone. So that they won't be sitting in the Starbucks with a wireless access point and a server sitting out there. They'll be phishing for you in their pants. And then that application will be collecting all of the data that you think nobody can see. So what am I going to do? Well, first, a few explanations and definitions. Luring unsuspecting users to provide sensitive information for identity or business theft. Basically, you're going to see how a website can be faked and how I'm going to redirect you to that website through my free Wi-Fi. Anybody find it yet? No? Can't see it?
It's a trap.
Anyway, let me check my phone. I worked on my phone just a few minutes ago. Oh yeah, there it is. Free MSAC Wi-Fi. I'll hook up my phone. I don't know. I don't need it's confusing. Most of my students are used to me doing my presentations like this. The first thing that we're going to define really quick is this thing called DNS. Unfortunately for us humans, we hate math and we hate numbers. We don't like to type in numbers to go places. We rather type in letters and symbols. So even though we have to type way more characters into our URL, we do it. The domain name service is going to basically resolve this domain name to an IP address. And that IP address is what you use to go ahead and connect to that website. A couple of utilities available for you to actually find out what your
IP address for your bank is. The simplest one is called the ping. And you can do that. I'll show you in just a minute what it looks like. Another type of DNS, the one I showed 2 years ago, is a host file. That's the one that you can actually make some entries into a file on your system and do the actual domain name resolution yourself. Here's what a ping command does, and here before I did any monkey business, I pinged Facebook's domain name, and it came back with the IP address that I would be using to connect to Facebook. Why Facebook is replying to pings, I don't know. There must be some reason. Packet internet groping. You thought Republican presidents were the only gropers? Well, candidates, that is. All right. Here we got Wells Fargo doesn't reply to pings. Ping is a reconnaissance activity, and usually it's ignored. When you ping Bank of America, it replies. I never could figure out why they do that, but they do. But Wells Fargo doesn't. Wells Fargo, that's their IP address that I had when I pinged them. Now the other thing, when you're actually out connecting to Wi-Fi's or connecting even to your Verizon Fios, you're using this thing called DHCP. Basically, you're a screaming 2-year-old. You scream out onto whatever network that you're on, and you're asking basically for an IP address. It's your pacifier. Now, how many of you know a 2-year-old that's going to discriminate about pacifiers? They'll take a pacifier from anybody, right? Just to get a pacifier. What if that pacifier is laced with whiskey? You could get that 2-year-old to do anything you want in just a few minutes, right? Of course, what if it's even worse and you had some cyanide on it? That'd be deadly. So when you scream out there on your network, you get an IP address. Not only do you get an IP address, but you get other things. You get a server that's going to resolve your domain names. Who did you get that from? Who's going to be doing that resolving? And you also have things like default gateway and other types of IP configurations. So today, we want free Wi-Fi. Yippee! We got some free Wi-Fi. It's sitting over there in the corner. It's an old wireless access point. It's unsecured. You can play around with it if you want. You can actually connect your phone. My phone's connected to it. I obtained an IP address from it already. And guess what else I got from it? Any ideas? DNS. A DNS server. Really? I wonder what that DNS server looks like. It's sitting right next to it. Oh, here, the free Wi-Fi is actually giving you IP addresses. I thought I'd go ahead and show you. It is acting as a DHCP server. And again, these types of applications, they're sitting on things that are 10 years old. This is old stuff. There's nothing that anybody can't do on this that's on those two things over there. So I could be sitting in the back of the room with one of these, and you'd be connecting to, you think, is the Starbucks free Wi-Fi, right? Now I'll be sitting there drinking my latte, collecting all of your personal information, letting the stuff go that I don't want, keeping the stuff that I do want. I can do that? By the way, you saw my disclaimer. I'm collecting absolutely no data from you. So feel safe. For those out there, they don't know that, though. You do, though. So my wireless access point is connected to a server. It's an old one. Again, it's a 2003. I haven't taken Jim's class, so I don't know how to do a 2008 server yet. I'll be signing up shortly, Jim. Here I set up a DHCP server. And one of the things that I hand out to you is a DNS server. That DNS server just so happens to be the same exact 2003 server. And let's see what we've done to that DNS server. Oh, look at that. We've made some entries into this DNS. There's a few of them. Bank of America, Citibank, Facebook, Twitter, Wells Fargo. For those of you who have stock in these companies, this is done for academic purposes only.
Better.
Don't be calling Facebook on me. Actually, I'm not worried about them. It's Wells Fargo that I'm worried about. Look at where Wells Fargo is going to go now when you type in www.Wells Fargo, actually Facebook. Well, geez, that's the same IP address as the server. You're kidding. That server is also a web server. It's a DHCP server. It's a DNS server. And it's a web server. Yeah, it is. Who would ever do such thing as a fake web server? Put up a fake Facebook, a fake Wells Fargo? Who would ever do that? What can you actually do when you actually set up all of this? Well, what I'm going to do is switch over my landline to my wireless on this laptop in just a minute. But before I do that, we have a few websites that we could actually do this with. I like this website, netcraft.com. I've been using it for quite a long time. 2 years ago when I did this presentation, this slide had a slightly different number. It was 250 million. So in 2 years, 250 million websites just came on. Can you protect yourself from all of them? Determine whether they're right or wrong? Well, if you do a little bit of reconnaissance on your own and determine what the IP addresses of those websites are, you might be able to protect yourself slightly. Of course, there's a few more today because I turned on that box over there. Actually, that box is not connected to the internet. So there's another little device that I actually could put on that, and I would make it a dual home server so that all the requests that you do make, I could pass right through to a legitimate, supposedly, server, and you get back a legitimate website. And I would only pick and choose the ones that I would want to collect data on. I chose not to do that. That is an implementation left up to you if you want to duplicate this demonstration. And one last slide here. Who would do such a thing? Who would actually redirect you to a web server or servers of their choice? See, I'm doing it for academic purposes. Why did China do it? See, China messed up. They got caught. This actually could have been done without them actually getting caught. Let's see if my internet's working. Problem is, when you do stuff like this, you get wireless access points and things messing you up all the time. I might still have access here. Back in April, China took over a few DNS servers. And for 18 minutes on April 8th, they got caught. 52,000 websites. How much data do you think they actually collected in 18 minutes? And that's when they got caught. Could they still be doing this transparently without you knowing? Whoa. Lots and lots of espionage going on between countries right now. This is one of the techniques. And they make a nice little observation here. The internet, we are frequently reminded, is a shockingly fragile creation. 4 computers when the internet actually was born. And the people who actually administered them and put these protocols together, they were good people. They didn't think about sending you somewhere else if you didn't want to go there. But now, 500 million web domain names, who knows how many servers and email servers and other types of servers that are out there just sitting there. Your phone has more processing capabilities than all 4 of those computers put together. It has amazingly created quite a scary monster. So right now, my Facebook should work. Oh, this is the little screenshot from down in the basement. I was just playing around and seeing who was attaching. And if anybody runs across this guy named James Simmons, please apologize to him, because his Facebook didn't work too well. And some references for this. Okay, so when I come out here and I head off to my Facebook, things are, oh, looks like my wireless access point is already working. Okay, there's the real Wells Fargo. I should clear my DNS cache. But here in my network connections, I have both a landline, a hard line in as my local area connection, and I also got the wireless network connection. I'm going to disable the landline. Take a few seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and enable my wireless. And look at that. We got free MSAC Wi-Fi. Of course, I tried to stay away from the other names. I don't want to get in too much trouble. Oh, by the way, talking about trouble, I always tell my students when I retire, become a dirty old man, put as many wireless access points in my attic. And I got a big attic now. I bought a house that has a whole second story up there. It's going to be the best reality TV you can imagine, right? Here's a little screenshot of some of the wireless access points in my neighborhood. And there's one in particular one that I'd like to mess around with. Let's see, where is that? It's a screenshot of my neighborhood's wireless access points. Let me look at my thumbnails. See if I can. There it is. Here's one I particularly want to name my wireless access point. How many of you see these in your neighborhood? How many of you connect? Oh, not after today, right? Don't do it. Don't do it. What could I name my wireless access point go away? And would this household connect to that wireless access point? Maybe. What if I do away with their wireless access point and then put mine in there. Can I do that? Are there any vulnerabilities in wireless access points like the Verizon Fios ones and the AT&T U-verse ones and those kinds of things? Take it down, put yours in there, and oh, I got to reconnect. There it is, bing. Before you know it, they're on your wireless access point. Really? You could do that? No, don't do that. But it's going to be great reality TV, right? All right, so I've connected to mine. Now I'm going to come out here and I'll open up another browser here, Firefox. Now all I basically did was connect to a wireless access point that was free. And it gave me an IP address, it gave me a DNS server, gave me a default gateway. It also is going to make my Firefox really slow. Let's go see Internet Explorer. Again, 10-year-old technology. Now things are going to start failing because I haven't redirected all websites, just a few. And again, I haven't made it a dual-homed box on purpose. But let's see if it takes me to Facebook. It did take me to Facebook. Whose Facebook did you land at, though?
JB's.
Welcome to JB's Facebook. Oh, look at that. What happens if I actually log in? Go ahead and put in my information here. Uh-oh. Now, of course, I wouldn't tell you that you've just been phished and that your Facebook credentials are gone. But that's how easy it is. Now, what about the banks? For those of you who are doing your Wells Fargo banking after connecting to my wireless access point, did I collect your account information? No, I already told you that I am not collecting account information whatsoever. But can Wells Fargo be spoofed too? One of these days they will determine that I do need new equipment here in this department. Okay, there we go. Whose bank did we end up at?
JB.
Oh, JB's bank. What's missing in this picture?
HTTPS.
For those of you who saw the previous presentation. Yes, and the HTTP, right? Did your browser tell you that this is a possible phishing attempt? No, because it resolved the domain name properly because, well, geez, your domain name server is a proper domain name server, and the only problem is I don't have Wells Fargo's private certificate to hand you on port 443, which is your secure socket layer port. But what if I did actually have a certificate? And I did hand you one. And how many of you actually clicked through, oh, it's okay, I'll ignore it this time? Oh, don't ever ignore those certificate warnings. Because you might be handed a certificate that ain't good. Even those ones that are expired. Now, Don't do the online banking if you see that their certificate is expired. How about some other banks? This is where it gets fun because I got really lazy. Type in Bank of America. It's going to resolve. But it resolves to, oh, Wells Fargo. And how about if we head off to Citibank? And of course, Citibank goes to Wells Fargo too. So you can't bank anywhere else other than JB's Bank, which would be Wells Fargo. So what did you do to avoid being nailed like this? Well, by the way, how many of you actually attached to that wireless access point? Anybody? Did it work for you too? Let's go to JB's Facebook. Don't worry, I'm not collecting any data. Now, of course, if I did slip on the other network interface card, I have it in here somewhere. Some of you might have these things. Plug it right into the US port. This would be my connection to the real internet. Then I could bridge that wireless access point and this, and I pass through all your other requests that I don't want to monkey with, but only take the data that I want for the domain names that I want. So you want to be careful hooking up with those free wireless access points. Now you're probably thinking, well, what if I pay for it? How many of you have seen the network administrators here at Mount SAC that control your domain name servers? You know any of them? You trust them? Anybody try to get to Facebook in some of the buildings, labs in building 17, and a little video starts dancing around?
Never.
What do you think they're doing? They're sending you to their Facebook. It'll work. You get a little video of some guy dancing around. Really? Everybody trusts your Verizon Fios? You paid a lot of money for that. Trust all the domain names that they resolve for you. You can see how easy it is to collect account credentials now. $25 per 1,000 Facebook accounts. Real ones, that is. Of course, what can you do with social media? I think a lot of you have seen some of the things that have happened with social media. One thing you should always question about social media is the person who is posting on your Facebook that actual person. Is it your mother, is it your father, is it your brother, is it your sister? If you tell you to buy 1,000 shares of a penny stock, you gonna do it? You can answer this question to yourself. Have you made personal decisions based on your social media? You know, this social media stuff's been around for ages. One of the most successful phishing attempts, well, it wasn't actually a phishing attempt, War of the Worlds, anybody remember that one? That social media called the radio. Was there any panic?
Massive.
A little bit. So you should always, if it comes down to a personal life decision and putting information into your online bank would be a personal life decision, you may want to question it at least once. Is this actually the Wells Fargo website? it Facebook? Any questions?
I think that certificate question thing when I go into Hotmail, is that related to that?
A what?
It says that it's not as secure. When I go to Hotmail, it says something about this website doesn't have a certificate or something like that, but I thought Hotmail was no.
Not always. If the email comes to you and they try to put a URL, an address in there, and they're trying to say it's somebody else, Hotmail might tell you that it is not matching up, but I wouldn't rely on that. You know, first of all, you probably shouldn't be clicking on hyperlinks that come through the email. There is no bank in the world that's going to ask for your credentials through a process like that, nor PayPal. I remember one time a business partner of mine, his daughter was trying to sell a camera, and the person who was buying this old camera was actually from Nigeria. And he said to use an escrow account through PayPal, and they called PayPal, and the answer from PayPal was quite astounding. There's absolutely nobody in Nigeria who has a valid PayPal account. That was a couple years ago. There might be a few now, but back then, zilch. So please ignore all that stuff, all those phishing attempts through the email. This, on the other hand, if I actually get you to attach to this wireless access point, how much control do I actually have? Well, I'm giving you an IP address. I'm actually going to log into the wireless access point right now. There it is. And if I come down here and see who's actually attached, there's a few folks. So I've given you an IP address. I even know the name of your device. Depending on what it might be, heck, could I send you an actual text message? Possibly. Could I send you instant messaging, maybe? Go to this site and I redirect you to one of my sites. Yeah, I've got a considerable amount of control. Anybody want to own up to the devices up on the screen? We got one over here. Anybody else? All right, I'm going to shut it off before I get in too much trouble. Any other questions? So the rule to take back is don't hook up with just anybody or anything. Know who you're hooking up with, all right? Just like in real physical space. And don't drink and browse. Because you just might hook up with anybody.